Crypto exchanges, turning dreams into nightmares.
Even digital gold can vanish in a puff of hype, yo.
Yeah, it's not investing. It's a coin toss with a fancier app.
Bitcoin's first big exchange became its biggest cautionary tale. Imagine.
Yeah, from trading magic cards to losing magic coins.
Let's get it started, yo.
Yeah, Kage, so
Gee.
you got any coins on exchanges?
Of course not, man. I've been saying that the best place to have your coins is, in the Centbee wallet.
Yeah.
And the only coins I'm talking about is, of course, BSV.
That's right. If it's not your keys on Centbee, well, you've got useless coins.
Straight up, yo.
We're going to be diving into the story today of a very famous exchange, Mt. Gox, that really, its taint hasn't left the crypto space for at least the last decade.
Yeah, Ms. G. And remember, it's also our duty to touch base on such, because these are historical events, and, us having to be Satoshi's soldiers, our focus is just having to put out the true gospel out there. So it's important that we also touch base on where the message was distorted.
That's right. And if you haven't been around in crypto for very long, one of the most famous stories of crypto and its downfall was a story about this online crypto exchange called Mt. Gox.
Yeah.
And lots of people lost a lot of money. And for the last 10 years, that's been playing out. And at the end of 2024 and into this year, 2025, finally the people who lost money on the crypto exchange Mt. Gox are going to start getting paid back. And that is a significant event, especially because there's hundreds of thousands of BTC now that need to be sold and sent over to customers, and there's been a lot of concern that selling all this BTC is going to have an impact on the price. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we're living through right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, definitely, G. I mean, we're living in speculation times when it comes to BTC and all,
That is right. We're living in speculative times.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
We really don't know what's coming up next. I'm glad that we know what's up when it comes to our side of things, BSV. We always trying to push adoption, the true gospel, the real Bitcoin that was created by Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yes, Satoshi Nakamoto, the GOAT of crypto.
Yes, he is. He is a living legend.
Straight up.
The one who everybody misunderstands and everybody's trying to be better than, but Satoshi got it right. So we're going to be breaking down that story today of Mt. Gox.
Yeah.
The story of this exchange, and I want to welcome all of you for joining us here on the Centbee Show. I'm your host Lorien and Gamaroff, and my co-host is Kage Wild West Ntshingila. Kage, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Ms. G?
I'm great. So last week we spoke about conferences that I attended, an iGaming conference and a fintech forum held in South Africa, and the other one in Botswana. I spent a lot of time actually traveling around to different conferences speaking about crypto and blockchain.
That's your other job.
You've been a busy boy.
That's the other job that I do. Now, in the olden days, before crypto became divided and there was just Bitcoin, I went to a lot of different conferences, especially crypto conferences.
Yeah.
And obviously with all the forks and the separation and the philosophical divides and all that kind of stuff that happened in crypto, I don't get invited to many of those crypto conferences. I think our ideas are too controversial.
Straight up, I believe so, because you always, preach about Satoshi's vision. Even regulators that like to hear something from you, because you always mention the fact that it should be compliant and it should be adopted in the current systems,
Yes, and that's why I get invited to fintech conferences and finance and payments conferences and iGaming conferences, because there's a lot of people in the industry, real industries out there, that are still interested in blockchain as a utility ledger. But of course, when you go to these crypto conferences, I mean, all you're going to see are charts and memes and pumping and dumping and Lambos and all that fake wealth that people keep flexing.
Yeah.
Those aren't what interest real people out there. The world is not interested in crypto fests. What they are interested in is, can blockchain solve problems?
Yeah.
And when Bitcoin first came along, the whole idea was that this was a transformational technology that was going to revolutionize the world. It was going to make costs of transactions cheaper. It was going to make things more trustworthy. It was going to disintermediate third parties that add costs and complexity.
Yeah.
But of course, it became a big crypto snooze fest, where it's just a bunch of crypto bros now shilling.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're interested in. So I go and speak at these conferences, these global conferences, these fintech and payment conferences and iGaming conferences and other regulatory conferences. And I go and explain what Bitcoin Satoshi's vision was meant to achieve.
Yeah.
And of course, when we talk about Bitcoin Satoshi's vision, we're not talking about anonymous, decentralized crypto that's encrypted, that nobody can trace and nobody can have any governance over. What we're talking about is the Satoshi's vision, which was always meant to aid compliance and aid regulation.
Yeah.
And of course, this is a message that none of these regulators and business people are hearing today, because they, of course, only get their news from the mainstream media. And to quote a famous philosopher, Denzel Washington,
Yeah.
You don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed.
and so we are now going to be trying to explain what the mainstream media and social network influencers are not telling you. And that is the true story of Bitcoin SV.
Cool, yeah, Ms. G. I mean, let's dive into it. What is Mt. Gox? What was it all about? When did it all started? I mean, we need to get into the history of that.
Yes, well, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty history. We'll
Yeah,
give
yeah.
a quick little overview of it. But
Yeah.
in 2010, around about then, there was a new Bitcoin exchange that will allow people to trade and exchange Bitcoins. And it was started by somebody who's quite prominent in the crypto space, a guy called Jed McCaleb. And he went on to found Ripple, which is another blockchain for transferring cash and transferring money. He also co-founded Stellar, the Stellar blockchain. But in those days, of course, Mt. Gox was just getting started out. Bitcoin was becoming more and more known, and people were getting more excited about it. And so what Jed McCaleb did was he then sold his burgeoning little crypto exchange, although in those days it was just Bitcoin, of course, and he sold it to a guy called Mark Capellas. And what happened was that Mark Capellas started building out and maintaining this new exchange, Mt. Gox. He moved the company to Tokyo, and that's really where most people in those days were trading cryptos. I think at one point it was about 70% of all Bitcoin that was traded on the Mt. Gox exchange. Millions of dollars per day that were moving to the exchange. It was very early on in the early days of Bitcoin, before regulators had started looking into these businesses. And of course, Mark Capellas didn't realize that Bitcoin trading would become such a massive phenomenon, which it eventually did.
It did. Because by 2013, it was already massive.
Yes, so it was now becoming a massive exchange. The thing about it, though, was that it wasn't ever built to be something that could support millions of dollars of Bitcoin being traded through the system. And there were a number of hacks that started taking place in the early days, which came to light much later, of course. And then it started having withdrawal issues. There were delays with withdrawals and transferring of fiat currencies into the exchange, and people started worrying about the solvency of the platform. And then by June 2013, there was about $5 million that was seized by the US authorities because of an unlicensed operation.
I mean, it makes sense, Ms. G. I mean, those were early days, you know. I'm sure it wasn't built to sort of like sustain the whole operations itself, you know.
Mark Capellas was a PHP developer, and he hadn't really built it to become robust. You know, it didn't have all the right security in there and the ability for it to be scalable. It was really just a one-man job. And as Jed McCaleb will say, you know, it started out as a hobby. It wasn't ever meant to scale to millions of people with millions of transactions. And so it just wasn't ever built with the same kind of security and robustness that other payment apps or exchange software, the way it's supposed to be developed.
Yeah.
And so hackers were able to get in throughout its lifetime. And
there's always a backdoor.
Of course, the back door.
And so that was the problem with the system. It wasn't meant to grow so big. And by the time the US authorities seized the $5 million, Mt. Gox was already going through liquidity issues.
Mr. G, that was 2013, but now we're in 2014. Like, what happens now? When did it actually start falling?
Yes. So in the beginning of 2014, trading was paused on the site, withdrawals stopped, and people really started getting very worried about the exchange. People like Roger Ver would come in and did a check. He gave a statement saying that he can't see anything wrong with the exchange. But by the middle of that year, that's when things just went dark. The whole site was switched off, and it turned out that 850,000 BTC had been misappropriated or stolen. Nobody knows what happened to it, but 850,000 BTC was suddenly gone from the exchange.
You stole our Bitcoin?
Oh, calm down. All I did was sneak onto your computer and download your Bitcoin onto a flash drive.
What?
And there were some famous scenes of people who had lost money on the exchange coming through to Japan, standing outside with billboards and signs saying, "Where's our money, Mount Gox?" And it was a real black eye on the whole ecosystem, and poor old Coppellas got the book thrown at him. And then what happened was Mark Coppellas found another 200,000 BTC in another wallet that he didn't know about, which seemed very suspicious at the time. But at least there was now BTC that could be paid back to the users who had lost money on the exchange. And that has been a process that's been taking 10 years now to unfold. And by the end of 2024 and into 2025, now users are starting to get paid back their missing money. But of course, it's not the BTC that's getting paid back. It was the value of the BTC at the time.
What a ripoff!
And so if you deposited $1,000 into the Mt. Gox exchange, you're only going to get $1,000 back, even if that was 1,000 BTC in those days.
Imagine.
You're not going to get your 1,000 BTC back.
Imagine.
Yeah. You know, this whole idea of exchanges, that's not what Bitcoin was meant to be.
Yeah.
You know, this idea of having a token that you can trade and flip and speculate on, that was never the whole idea of Bitcoin, of course.
Yeah.
The idea was that it was meant to be cash, a cash system. And these exchanges, all they were supposed to do was facilitate access to those Bitcoins, you know, being able to now acquire Bitcoins, which even today is quite complex for most people.
Yeah.
That's what really just created this whole trading mindset. The fact that people were now able to go into these exchanges and start trading Bitcoin, and the price was starting to pump and dump. And, you know, that really was the beginning of people getting the wrong impression of what Bitcoin should be.
Yeah.
And it just became about speculation, even regulation, KYC, that sort of thing. They didn't take it very seriously. And so Mt. Gox was one of those organizations that came along in Bitcoin that really started making regulators very uncomfortable. And obviously in the aftermath of the Mt. Gox problem that happened, the hack, that really did make regulators very anxious, I guess you can say, about these crypto exchanges. And that's why we see over the last decade how bit by bit regulators are starting to clamp down on these unregulated exchanges just so that they can stop this sort of thing happening again.
Yeah, Ms. G, but Mark Coppellas blamed Bitcoin. Like, he said Bitcoin was the issue, not his system or software.
Yeah, that's right. One of the things that Mark Coppellas blamed on this problem of the hack was something in Bitcoin called transaction malleability. And without getting into the technical aspects of it too much, the idea of malleability really is that when you create a transaction on Bitcoin, what happens is you then get a transaction ID. And one of the features that Bitcoin has, because of features like being able to split transactions and combine transactions, you do have the ability to change the transaction ID. It doesn't change the validity of the transaction, but this feature in Bitcoin in those days wasn't well understood. And what Mark Coppellas was doing was he was using that transaction ID to uniquely identify transactions on the system. And because the ID can be malleable, it can change, then obviously something happened where he couldn't identify transactions. And what he said was that, well, this was the problem in the whole hack, is that because of transaction malleability, because of this flaw, in inverted commas,
Imagine.
in Bitcoin, that is why this hack happened. But what we have subsequently learned is that, of course, malleability doesn't do that. It doesn't make transactions invalid or hide transactions or anything like that.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
And so this was eventually debunked by people who understand Bitcoin and saying, look, this isn't a problem with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
This is, as you say, a problem in the way that you built your website.
Yeah.
That was one of the excuses that Coppellas tried to give, but it didn't wash, and he couldn't get away with it.
Clearly, man. I mean, till today, we're still having issues with people misinterpreting the white paper, or they've never just went through it.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we still have these issues, Mr. G, you know.
Yes. And one of the issues that we have, if you think about BTC, you know, now, of course, remember, we are a show that is always talking about the original version of Bitcoin, which is Satoshi's vision, his idea, his protocol that he delivered to us in his white paper. And Bitcoin has been split into the 3 different versions. We've got Bitcoin BTC, which is the changed version of Bitcoin, or Bitcoin Core. We've got Bitcoin Cash, and we've got Bitcoin SV, Satoshi's vision. But the people in Bitcoin Core also saw transaction malleability as a problem. Because remember, they don't understand Satoshi's Bitcoin. They are trying to change it and fix it in their mind. But what they saw was that transaction malleability meant that they couldn't have another solution that they are trying to implement even to this day, which is the Lightning Network.
The lightning that never struck.
And the Lightning Network is supposed to solve the problem that BTC has, where they only have a small number of transactions that can be processed in a block. And the reason for that is because of the limited block size. Bitcoin started off with no block size. It was meant to scale in an unbounded way. But BTC, they've got that maximum decentralization concept that they're trying to implement, where you can't have large blocks, which means you don't need large servers to be able to handle those blocks. They want to have everybody running a little laptop or a little computer, Raspberry Pi famously.
Which is impractical.
Right. They want to have the whole Bitcoin node, the whole database, the whole ledger running on a little computer. And so they artificially limited the block size to 1 megabyte. But that means BTC transactions are too expensive and are not reliable. Because you're always trying to compete to get into the block, because there's a limited number of transactions that can fit into that block. And so BTC have been trying to change Bitcoin so that it can now also facilitate what they call a second layer network. In other words, move transactions off the Bitcoin blockchain onto this new network, which they call Lightning.
Why would they do that? Who would do that?
Which they're still trying to figure out, which still doesn't work. And one of the things that was required was to fix this transaction malleability, the ability to change the transaction IDs. And also another thing they wanted to do, of course, was the segregated witness thing.
I wanted to mention that I think that's where also they got the idea of having to implement SegWit.
Well, segregated witness was another solution to try and make those transactions smaller so that you could fit more into the block. And they said, well, this transaction malleability can be solved with the segregated witness fix. And then once we've done that, we can then enable Lightning Network to be able to move transactions away from the blockchain into this other network.
Second layer. Which doesn't make sense, Mr. G, because when we're having blockchain conversations, it's on chain.
That's right. That's what Bitcoin was meant to be. That is where the transactions are. Just quickly, an issue with Lightning Network is that it moves transactions away from the blockchain into a different network, and that breaks the trail of transactions, the traceability of those transactions. And that's why it's so important that the transactions stay on Bitcoin. But BTC really thought, finally, we can do this. We can now solve malleability. We can put segregated witness in, and we can start pursuing this idea of Lightning Network, which hasn't struck yet.
It will never strike, Mr. G.
Doesn't seem like it.
We can bet on that.
So that is what happened to try and solve the problem that was not a problem. Of course, when you get into this idea of transaction malleability and you understand why Satoshi made it so, you realize that it brings an enormous number of great features and capabilities into Bitcoin that wouldn't be possible if you couldn't malleate those transaction IDs.
Straight up, Mr. G. I mean, that's facts.
That's a bit of technical understanding, because we know our viewers don't mind a bit of technicals.
But that's the thing, Mr. G. You know, it also, for me, it also highlights like how much we go in depth in terms of having to understand Satoshi's true vision. And it goes about having to go through the white paper and understanding it fully.
Yes. And also, if you understand it, then you realize that it's not meant to be this anonymous system that is encrypted, that nobody can understand, and it's not traceable. As we will always tell you in this show, Bitcoin was meant to comply with all the existing rules that have been put in place over decades, maybe even centuries, around payments. You know, the fact that you can't have anonymous transactions and all that. Satoshi thought of all that. And if you understand Bitcoin, it actually is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Because one of the issues around crypto today is you have all these people who are really excited about it and they want to see a crypto world and they are trying to convince people that it's a great thing, but they can't get rid of that crypto baggage. In other words, the baggage that they're trying to maintain, which is that ungovernable baggage, the fact that crypto is meant to be decentralized, and that word decentralization they mean to as something that cannot be stopped, it cannot be controlled, you can't have oversight over it, you can't govern it, you can't regulate it. It's really just the Wild West, as you said earlier.
It's crazy, Mr. G. But we all know that it's not viable and it's not practical for, the world to operate like that. We need like a compliant and regulated system.
If we don't, then I can tell you now, regulators and governments are never going to allow it. There's never going to be a Bitcoin reserve if Bitcoin is unstoppable and uncensorable. So for everybody out there who wishes Donald Trump would go and buy his Bitcoin BTC reserve, well, how are you going to get past the whole fact that crypto and BTC pundits and everybody's pushing the whole BTC story is trying to maintain that ungovernable, unseizable, uncensorable ideology?
It's all in their dreams, Mr. G. That will never happen in the real world, yo. So yeah, Mr. G, I mean, you spoke about earlier on that, some people were getting paid.
So the expectation is by the end of 2025 that all the creditors will have been paid back. But this has created a little bit of uncertainty in the whole BTC market. There was a time where a lot of BTC from Mt. Gox was sold to pay back creditors. That happened in 2018, famously the Mt. Gox dump. What was it called? Yeah, Mt. Gox dump. And so by selling a lot of BTC into the market, people are worried about the stability of the price. That's the whole thing about BTC, right? It's got nothing to do with any fundamentals. It's got to do with what are people buying, what are people selling, is there a big dump coming? That's just the nature of the game.
Crypto industry is like laxative. It's like a laxative industry. You're always expecting a big dump.
Motherfucker, I ain't the smartest man in the world, but from over here, it look like you taking a shit. Ezel, get the hell on my
Right. And so that's basically, really in a nutshell. There's a lot of documentaries about this whole Mt. Gox saga. We want to highlight it because it was one of the events that happened in history that really did cast a pall over the whole industry.
Yeah.
We have these exchanges out there that people are depositing their coins onto, and you don't know who's behind that exchange. You don't know if the guys are going to do a what's it called, an exit
An
exit scam, a rug pull.
A rug pull, yeah.
Yes, you don't know if people are going to be rug pulling you.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just the nature of these exchanges in this unregulated environment. There's this concept of a bucket shop when it came to trading, and in those days, this was something in sort of beginning of the 1900s. People would go to these unregulated exchanges and they would be buying and selling commodities or whatever it was in these unregulated bucket shops, and there would often be rug pulls and things going wrong.
Yeah.
And so really what exchanges are today largely are just unregulated. There's a lot going on there that you don't know. Famously, FTX, we saw how FTX, this massive exchange that was just doing all sorts of dodgy stuff behind the scenes, eventually collapsed. Just because a company is big and making lots of money in crypto, it doesn't mean that they are safe. Another one was Celsius.
Yeah.
And that also went under. And even though we look at companies like Binance and Coinbase and Kraken, you still don't know what's going on behind the scenes there.
Facts.
And if you are depositing all your crypto onto these exchanges, there's a lot of trust that's involved. And so if you don't want to be a victim, if you manage to miss the whole Mt. Gox saga and you weren't damaged by that, don't be damaged by other crypto exchanges that might very well turn out also to be illiquid and bankrupt, and you just don't know it yet. So it's a very scary environment. But I mean, that's just to highlight this whole idea that crypto is a mug's game. Even if you have a crypto exchange that goes out to try and be compliant and has got licenses and they're doing all the right regulation checks, KYC and all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, you still don't know what's going to be happening to crypto. There could, at any day now, be a massive dump that just wipes out the crypto market because it's all just buoyed up on speculation. on hopium. It's all floating on clouds, and those clouds can just disappear in an instant, and all your crypto dreams turn into nightmares.
Like I was saying, it's FTX. It's a safe and easy way to get into crypto.
I don't think so. And I'm never wrong about this stuff. Never.
So forget about this whole speculative game. You know, it's not just about a sketchy exchange that will steal your money or rug pull you. It's just the whole nature of crypto.
Yeah.
There is no fundamental basis for its value.
Yeah.
Really, all crypto is just a big casino.
It's a gamble, yo.
Yes, I go to these iGaming conferences and I talk about blockchain in these iGaming conferences. And before I get there, when people look at the program, they think, finally we're going to be able to bring crypto into these iGaming platforms of ours and people can trade cryptos. They don't know that blockchain, BSV Blockchain, is so much more than that. It's a utility platform that can really revolutionize the iGaming industry as well as other industries. So that's where you should be. You should be looking at Bitcoin as something that is fundamental, transformative. And if you're just going to be speculating on these tokens, the inevitability of you being destroyed by your hopes in this unregulated world built on hopium, it's just so high. And do you want to play that game? Do you want to be the person who is stuck on an exchange when suddenly things start falling apart, trying to get your money off, trying to sell your crypto when the price is just going through the floor? Do you want to wait until you get to that point before you wake up and decide that it's just too hot?
No. It's not what I want.
Think ahead. Beat the crowd. Get out of that whole system. You're not going to be winning. There's very few winners in crypto.
Only the house wins.
The house wins, and the people who are on the inside getting together, scheming on how to pump the market, how to dump the market, that is crypto. But really the amazing thing is, though, that we have a technology now that you can go and learn about, and you can see how can it add real value to my life, my business, or just as a cash utility by using Centbee.
Straight up, Ms. G, and those are facts, man. We try to talk the truth and tell, the people about the real Bitcoin. So I guess it's up to you to make the decision. And remember, this is your real BSV plug. Tell your neighbors, your dog, everyone. Yeah, mobile money on fire. Yeah, Ms. G, I mean, we've seen like all these exchanges sort of collapsing. So what does that mean for us? We shouldn't trust like companies to be storing our coins?
Yeah, this idea of not your keys, not your coins.
Yeah.
This is obviously what a lot of crypto people always say. They say that, well, it's your fault. If you go and trust a company with your coins, then they're not your keys. They've got them and they could walk away, and that's just too bad. But that is not how Bitcoin was built.
I wanted to say, Mr. G, I'm like, that we can't be running companies like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the whole idea of being able to trust a business with your money, I mean, that's just fundamental to how the world works.
Really?
We've done it forever with our banks
and
mobile money apps. We trust businesses to look after our money.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, is if the money is gone, if it gets taken from us through a hack, or the company does a rug pull and just disappears with your money, it doesn't mean that you've got no protections. In the real world, if that happens, then there is a recourse. You can go to a judge and you can go and say, well, look, I got my money stolen. I need it back. And one of the amazing things about Bitcoin is that was considered by Satoshi Nakamoto. The fact that if money gets stolen, that you can recover it. I mean, that is the most basic thing you need in a payment system.
Imagine if banks operated like that, Mr. G, where your money just disappears and then they're like,
hacked, sorry.
Not our problem.
This is now why there is such interest around the idea of digital asset recovery.
Yeah.
And we did have a show with Connor Murray, who is the head of protocol stability at the Bitcoin Association, and he explained to us that Bitcoin has this concept of digital asset recovery. Now, when you have a Bitcoin, if you think about how Bitcoin is structured, we have the mining network. And the mining network is sustained by large entities that have massive infrastructure, investment into hardware and staff and resources and buildings. And so that is what makes them accountable. And if there is a hack, if somebody does lose millions of dollars of their money, or if a business loses millions of dollars, what you can actually do is you can then go through the digital asset recovery process on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You can go to the miners, and of course this is what would happen through a court order or something like that.
Yeah.
And the court could then determine that the miners now need to recover those funds. And what they can do is they can then go and create a transaction, and they can process that transaction that returns the money to the owner or whoever that money needs to go to.
Yeah.
And so even though what we see on today, when we look at these exchanges, people have crypto on these exchanges, the exchange gets hacked, crypto gets lost, and there's nothing you can do about it. Bitcoin SV doesn't work that way. It has within it the ability to be able to recover stolen funds. Now, of course, just like in the real world, if you have stolen funds, it's not that easy. You can't just go to the person who stole your money and get it back.
Yeah.
I need my money. I need my money. I need my money right now.
You do have to go through the court process. And
there's law for that.
there's a legal system, and you've got to go through that legal system. Now, it's not cheap going through the legal system, as anybody who's ever gone through the legal system knows, but that is the avenue for us to be able to resolve issues like this. And far from Bitcoin being a system where you cannot recover money if something goes wrong.
I just stole some money.
Let's say you identify money and it's money from a terrorist or money launderer, then because of that accountable network, the mining network, you have the ability through the legal system, and we always say that Bitcoin is secured through the legal system, not through technology.
Yeah.
You can then go and recover those funds or have those funds seized if you identify them as being linked to crime.
Yeah.
And this is what Bitcoin was meant to be. Now, of course, in the whole crypto space, you're never going to hear that, because that line, not your keys, not your coins. If your keys get stolen, then your coins are lost. That is not how Bitcoin works. It's something that will give businesses and people confidence when they want to start engaging in Bitcoin SV, that there is a mechanism to be able to recover funds if something goes wrong.
I mean, that's the normal world, where things are working and where everyone is accountable, Mr. G. That's a no-brainer. Mr. G, we mentioned the digital asset recovery, but there's also, the network access rules, which sort of, governs how everyone interacts with the network.
Yes, and that was also covered in our discussion with Conor Murray.
Yeah.
The idea that it's not just about you interacting with the technology. What happens is there are rules around how you engage in business activities on the network.
Yeah.
Now, these aren't protocol rules. They're not technological rules. This is just general behavior, just like in any business practices, ethical business practices. The network access rules are defined as being able to bring that same kind of good behavior into the Bitcoin ecosystem, so that when businesses are engaging with each other, even if they can steal somebody's coins, whatever they can do, just because they can doesn't mean they should.
They should, yeah.
And those network access rules actually become a legal framework for businesses to now be able to have confidence in their relationships, and know that if anybody steps out of line, if they disobey or break those rules, then there will be repercussions for them. And so not only is there a technological aspect to Bitcoin in terms of its mining and processing of transactions, that also has the general good behavior,
ethics,
the ethics of how to engage with Bitcoin and how to use it, how to offer it as a service to your business, your customers, and how to use it in your business. And so this is, again, another way that people can feel confident when working with Bitcoin SV, that it's not just a free-for-all, it's not just a Wild West, it is a responsible, grown-up, mature, and ethical ecosystem where everybody is playing by the rules.
And Mr. G, I wanted to highlight, the ethical part, because I think we just passively say it, and look at the BTC side. There's no form of ethics in any way there. People get ripped, there's lies, speculation, like there's no honesty in that field, basically.
That's crypto.
Yeah.
Crypto is a Wild West. It's every man for himself. It's free for all. And whatever you can do, you do it.
That's like Savage Land, yo.
Yes, it's Lord of the Flies. That's crypto, Lord of the Flies. A bunch of boys running around trying to stab each other and steal from each other. That's just it. But Bitcoin SV is not that. Bitcoin SV is an environment that any business, any regulator, any consumer
Yeah.
can come in and feel that this is the right place, a place where the criminal element is excluded,
Yeah.
and there are ways of recovering money,
Yeah.
and just general accountability.
For real, because we may, it may sound a bit cliche, but, if you really want to get rich, start building, on top of the BSV blockchain, because that's where true wealth lies. There's proof of work on our side, not just proof of stake,
Yes, with proof of stake, there's just the sizzle without the stake.
Exactly. Straight up.
Going back to this idea of decentralization, which is something we can't say enough, it wasn't about unaccountability and people being able to do whatever they want. The decentralization was to create a resilient network that enabled peer-to-peer transactions, not so that it would become ungovernable.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is beholden to the rules and regulations that are specified around the world when it comes to payments and transactions and all that. So it is a safe environment that real businesses can happily engage in.
Yeah, no, straight up. Facts, yo. Guys, remember to subscribe, yo. Show some love. Mobile money on fire. I mean, Mr. G, we always say that adoption is key, So we know that utility beats speculation at any day. So we believe that people should be using BSV as the main blockchain, as the only, in fact. Ignore all the noise outside, This is the real utility blockchain. So, yeah, just get working on that, man. Stepping into this week's user questions and feedback. So, yeah, our first one comes from The Vision. And they're saying Bitcoin was created to take power away from the traditional financial system, not to hand it back like Ponzi BTC. Think BSV.
Bitcoin isn't meant to undermine the system or undermine the way that the financial system works and replace it. It was meant to work with it, and it was meant to complement it. Bitcoin is a complementary system to not just the financial system, but every way the world works.
Wherever information flows, Mr. G.
Yes, how information flows, how goods flow, how accounting is done, how information is verified.
Smooth.
Every aspect of human interaction.
That's right. So the mistake is thinking that that's what Bitcoin is for, to take power away from the man and to undermine the system and to disintermediate the whole the whole financial system.
Yeah.
It's a complementary system, something that can improve the system.
Yeah.
It can take away the middleman, something that can reduce the costs of transactions, and it can also provide integrity and security to the financial system. So don't think of Bitcoin as this tool that is anarchistic, something that wants to disrupt how the world works. Yes, of course, there are going to be certain things in the way the financial system works that are not going to be necessary anymore. I mean, just the simple fact of having financial intermediaries between people when they want to make payments in a digital way. Yes, Bitcoin can provide a peer-to-peer way of making that payment, but that's not going to eliminate the need for the entire financial system. Bitcoin isn't going to replace banking. It's not going to replace the financial services that the industry provides. It is just a better way of providing those financial services, providing payments.
We need it!
It's also a better way of tracking goods through a supply chain. It's going to now enhance the financial system. Sure, it's going to take power from some of the actors in the financial system. If your job is just as a financial intermediary, a payment intermediary, yes, your role is going to be diminished. But it doesn't mean that now the financial system that is dense and has many players all providing different services and different roles, that Bitcoin is going to take that away.
No more middleman.
Bitcoin is not a bank. It's not an insurance company. It's not a broker. It's not a stock exchange. It is just a better network for making safer, cheaper transactions, a system that can tokenize goods, that can facilitate the trade of those goods and can track those goods through a supply chain.
And it's immutable.
Yes. And so Bitcoin is a wonderful new tool that is going to enhance the financial system as we see it today.
Straight up. Those are facts, guys. Thanks, The Vision. Yeah, our second one comes from the original Bitcoin, BSV. And they're saying, thanks again to Centbee, Gamaroff, and Kage for pumping out quality content week after week. Mr. G, I feel like, it's an obligation for us. Our last one comes from Metamorphosis. It's actually quite a dope name, as in Metamorphosis. So what they're saying is this is how Bitcoin integrates with the traditional payments networks. Eventually, it will beat them because it is cheaper and more secure, just like you said, Mr. G.
Yeah, there we go. I think Metamorphosis is definitely onto something.
Yeah, no, he hit it like straight on the nose there, man. Mr. G, I think we've actually come to the end of our show.
Okay, great. Cool. Well, thank you very much. And especially thank you very much for the comments and the feedback that we're getting. We really are feeling very much loved here on the Centbee Show from all our fans out there who are enjoying the show. We feel like we've got an obligation here. We want this world of Bitcoin to come fast. It's already been 15 years and we are very much in the same position as we were.
Still in the infant stages, yo.
The world has not moved on for a decade, even though Bitcoin has just been waiting and waiting to emerge out of the nest.
Yeah.
People are determined to keep Bitcoin inside that nest.
You're slowing down the progress of all mankind.
Even though it wants to spread its wings and change the world. And that's not going to happen on its own. It's going to take everybody out there who believes in Satoshi's vision to spread that vision, to explain that vision, and to start working. Start proof of working. Building apps, doing educational things, whatever it is. We want Satoshi's vision to be realized. And so we have a role to play in this, and we've taken this upon ourselves. We want to share information about Bitcoin so that people can understand it and we can get this world happening faster.
And we can't do it by ourselves, Mr. G. We need everyone on board,
On board!
Yeah, that's right. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button over there, hit the like button. It's really going to help. Our numbers are growing, and the more of you guys that do that, that's all you got to do. That's all the only support we want. A couple likes, a couple subscribes. We know that the message is going to be able to get out there faster, and we can finally see a world that is improved by Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But other than that, Kage,
Mr. G,
I want to thank you all for joining us here today on the Centbee Show. Please come back soon. So, Kage, how many cryptards does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know, Mr. G. You want to tell me that?
None, because they're all useless.
That's accurate, yo.
Fresh joke on the Centbee Show. You heard it here first. Go meme that one up.